You might very well think that. I could not possibly comment.
First off, before we begin, I want to give thanks to everyone for hanging in there. I appreciate it. Last episode, that long post-mortem written by Pavlos and performed by Denul, it went on a little bit too long. That's on me, and it's not on Zool. I should have broken up the verbalized wall of text with some commentary or perhaps a video to break it up a little bit. Do not get me wrong, I do think that the information in full was important. There have been so many folks that have appeared on modding forums thinking that putting together a large-scale mod like M4-78 is relatively easy and not time-consuming at all. Having that well-detailed post-mortem punctures that balloon quite effectively. Let's begin with our new chapter. Chapter 3, Darth Shan's Droid World. When I was planning this documentary way back in 2015, this current chapter wasn't even conceived of. Here's the lowdown, folks. I completely forgot about another M4-78 mod that actually came out. There was a mod created by a guy with a screen name of Darth Shan. Darth Shan's mod of M4-78, simply called Droid World, came out way back in 2006. Let's get this into context by having a contemporary review of this mod by a staff member named Shem, and he was on KOTOR Filefront. M4-78 was a droid planet that at one point was going to make an appearance in the sequel to 2003's Game of the Year, Knights of the Old Repuiblic 2, The Sith Lords. Due to time constraints, Obsidian cut the planet from the game. However, the modules were left over and a lot of the original work with it, which means that talented modders can add the planet back to the game again, which means new areas to explore. After a long layoff from modding, Darth Shan has returned with an update to his M4-78 mod for all of us to enjoy. The update includes some bug fixes from his original release, along with a fix to the Mandalorian cache module. That area is where you find a bunch of droids and containers once you blow the charges and go inside. The author does not use the TSL patcher, and there are some 2DA files. Darth Shan does plan to use the TSL patcher in a future release. The good news is that the author makes a list of mods this mod is compatible with in his README file. Please make sure you read the lengthy README file so you don't screw up your game. Enjoy the updated version of M4-78. Note, please leave the author feedback, especially if you download this mod and use it. It really helps encourage the author to make more mods in the future. I was lucky to track down Darth Shan and ask him some questions about his mod. And for no reason whatsoever, I voiced Darth Shan with a computer voice. Okay, let's be honest. How long do you really want to listen to my voice? How did you first learn about the files for M4-78?
Back in the day, there was a website called PCGamingMods.com. There, they had files from the unfinished droid planet. I think it was just the 7 basic modules already packaged to mod format. They were tagged with the note that these files were hacked from the Xbox version of TSL, and they weren't to be found in the PC retail.
What inspired you to make this mod?
A user called Aurora was the first one to share insights on unfinished content to be found in the game files, including TLK entries, unused audio files, and unused module files. She founded a group called Team Gizka to do a restored content mod. M4-78 was explicitly not a part of what would be restored. Another group, Team Bantha, then proposed to do a restoration of the droid planet. I think that was in 2006. Team Gizka made progress. At least they said so. But they did not share their results apart from some very good fixes by Razorfish. Later, they abandoned the project. Team Bantha eventually dissolved and the other restoration projects did not include M4-78. By that time I had already tried out other modding techniques. Scripting, module editing, audio editing. Always applying alterations to existing mods, for private use only. Then, I finally began putting together the 7 modules of M4-78 by creating transitions from one area to the other. I also modified the warp band mod to include teleporting to the droid planet modules. These must have been some of my earliest scripting efforts. You see, I was completely inexperienced. Unwilling to wait any longer for the restorations, I put together the areas and began thinking about making the whole thing playable and integrate it into the main program, so that you did not need in-game mod tools and no cheat codes.
Could you give a general plot description of your version of the mod?
Well, it was intended just for exploration. I did not want to integrate it into the main quest of the game. You could play this or just leave it be. The mod was supposed to add nothing important and not alter anything important. The final idea was to put in some information about what Revan did between KOTOR 1 and TSL. I put in a lot of conversation with the Archons about Revan and the current state of the galaxy.
What was your favorite part of creating this mod?
I had 2 play testers, as soon as I had put together the basic stuff. They gave me a lot of feedback of what worked and what didn't. Seeing that this comparatively big project was taking shape, and that it actually worked as a whole. That was the most important and pleasing experience concerning M4-78. In a nutshell, the experience of playing this part of the game as a part of the proper campaign, and the feedback from the community, these were the best parts of creating the mod.
Was there a reason Master Vash wasn't included in your mod?
There was already a very good Vash integration which I found very well done. That mod was called Master Vash on Core E-Ban. So, there was no need to put her into M4-78. I also wanted to prevent conflicts with other mods.
In your opinion, what in your mod didn't live up to expectations?
I think the mod did exactly what it was intended to do, get the user access to cut content without breaking the main game. The gameplay was clunky at best, and you saw through the whole setup immediately that this was a provisionary solution. I did not even restore the electric pylons in the second area, the hub for the next sections, because I did not understand what to put in to make sense of the floating electric charges.
You mentioned that your mod was inferior to the other M4-78 mods. Have you personally played Darth Stoney's original version or the later version called M4-78 Enhancement Project? What did you like and dislike about those mods?
I played Stoney's original version and an intermediate version on the way to the Enhancement Project, but I haven't got around to the final version that is currently obtainable via the Steam Workshop or Deadly Stream. Well, what can I say? This is the real thing. The main plotline struck me not as very gripping. Like I said, I have grown used to see Master Vash on Core E-Ban, and that is actually a very good addition to Core E-Ban. I especially like the cutscenes Stoney added to M4-78. Still, the real purpose of M4-78 isn't in here either.
In the spoiler document included with the mod, you say, quote, "After having spoken to Archon M4-78 and getting the additional items, there is nothing to be done anymore. If you wonder what he is hinting at, referring to the importance of droids in the galaxy, play my story enhancement mod despite its bugs." Unquote. As it may not be available to download anymore, could you reveal the significance of what M4-78 was hinting at?
Well, you're really getting to the meat here. The first version was called Nihilus is the Exile. Then I thought on expanding it to include extra episodes of every single planet after Telos. There were 3 intended quest lines. M4-78 should have introduced us to droid factions, droid thinking and droid-based quests. They have their own planet, their own ways of communicating and building their own community, in short, their own culture. This content, I think, is lost forever. My own story mod was originally intended to offer some droid-based content as a part of the main campaign of TSL, but I never finished it as well.
It's an old mod, so trying to get reviews from it from back in the day were a little bit difficult. So I thought the best thing to do would be ask people, try playing with the mod. A lot of people will use TSL RCM nowadays, so I had to ask them to try and use it without it because it's not compatible with TSL RCM. So what's the general public have to say about it? From Have a Yap.
I like this version, it isn't that bad.
From Oops, I Forgot.
One of the most prominent KOTOR 2 mods out there is the M4-78 Enhancement Project, and I can't imagine that anybody who's looked into these mods at all hasn't heard about it, although that might just be because I have a poor imagination. In any event, what many do not know is that there was another M4-78 mod made and released much earlier, 2007 to be exact. Sith Holocron recently unearthed this mod, and at his request I have done a playthrough of it, if a bit of a rushed one, and I'm now reviewing it for all who are interested. According to the handy, if basic, walkthrough that is provided with the mod, there are now 2 computer terminals that refer to the planet and will give you data pads which can then be used by T3M4 to give you one more datapad, which will allow you to travel to M4-78 via the Ebonhawk's security panel. Using warps, I verified the existence of the terminals, but did not test the remaining parts of the lead-up, having instead warped directly to M4-78 to play the planet. Suffice to say that the lead-up to the planet gives plenty of mystery, and in a good way. On the other hand, M4-78 is not a part of the central story, instead taking the role of a side quest. Once you get to the actual planet itself, the gameplay is rather straightforward. You learn a little bit about the planet from a greeter droid, then go into the central zone where you meet L565, one of about 5 to 10 non-hostile droids in the entire planet. He gives you a basic rundown of the situation, which is, basically, that the whole colony's been messed up. And then you can go right into the Archon chamber to meet the Archon IS-24. From there, you have to fight through one zone to get to the other Archon, ES-05, then unlock and fight through the last zone to get to the Central Intelligence, M4-78. Going through the zones consists almost entirely of fighting through a ton of droids that don't hit particularly hard, but do have a lot of hit points, which means the fights take extremely long for characters of lower levels. With better gear, you might get through faster, but later parts will still take a while. Once you get to the Archon chambers, you just have to go through a long conversation, then move on. There are a couple of basic puzzles, which consist of interacting with the terminal with the correct datapad that was acquired either from the remains of an adversary or from one of the few non-hostile characters. For your trouble, you are rewarded at the end with knowledge and 2 super-powered lightsaber crystals. Unfortunately, a couple of bugs in the mod prevent progress, and so the entire planet cannot be experienced. Some parts I saw, such as the main behavior core, I could only get to using the cheat console. Story-wise, through most of the mod, we get the story of the Sith being the colonists of the planet, but Archon ES-05 realizing that they were not the original colonists and releasing deadly radiation. The player's role is to reactivate the Central Intelligence Unit M4-78. This is the same basic story that the current M4-78 EP has, and I believe it came from the original M4-78 files. Once you get to the end and talk to M4-78, there's an interesting backstory provided for the planet. The basic gist of it is that M4-78 was originally built by the Rakata of the Infinite Empire, and was more recently found and used by Revan for his conquests. Somehow, this is overlapped with the story of the Sith colonists, which really seems to be underdeveloped in this mod. It's an interesting little backstory, but there are also continuity issues in the form of a claim that both T3M4 and GOTO were manufactured on M4-78. But in any event, the majority of the gameplay is really devoid of story. Other than that, I have elsewhere seen a basic tour of the data that was left in the game files when M4 was cut, and this mod appears to be pretty much just inserting that content back into the game with a couple of little additions, such as some dialogue. The only voiced character is IS-24, whose voice files, sounding quite similar to Dagon Gent's, were left in the original game files. There's really not much around besides a bunch of enemy droids and containers with random loot, with a few additions such as a workbench and 2 vendor droids, and of course the story-related material, found only in the main behavior core. Amusingly enough, this also has the result of the 2 Archons and M4-78 taking the form of the Phyraxa sharks from Anon in the first KOTOR game, which had been used as placeholders prior to the planets being cut. Oh, and also the central and environmental zones are also apparently flooded with radiation, although this has no real effect other than limiting visibility. So, is this mod worth playing? In my opinion, it may have been nice to have back when there were no other M4-78 mods out there, but now we have the M4-78 EP, which is far superior. The gameplay of this mod is rather simplistic, almost entirely tedious fights with droids that have a lot of hit points, and the story is a bit less plausible and certainly less well integrated than that in the EP. This mod is not a great addition to the game, but it is an interesting way to get a mostly accurate look at the remains of Obsidian's work on the planet, and it also gives me an appreciation for just how much work went into the EP.
And from Purifier. Well, I got halfway through it, Sith Holocron, but some bugs in that mod seemed to pop up when I saved the game at certain points, which caused other problems in the mod preventing me from going any further, and so I gave up. What stopped me was, couldn't get through the magnetic force field doors to the industrial zone. The lock thingy in the bar that was usually there for me to pick at the beginning of the mod wasn't there anymore, after a save, for me to pick, and the door wouldn't open like a non-locked door normally should. I think maybe I did something wrong, but then again there were other bugs in that mod that make me think otherwise. I don't know for sure. But besides that problem, I don't care for the gameplay in that mod all that much either. Seems at various times, as almost monotonous with wave after wave of droid fighting to get from one place to another with all that fighting going on. I don't know. Just seemed a little too long for me in those specific cases. I think it was overdone. Another thing I think they overdid was the obsessiveness with the containers at the beginning when you first walk from the Hawk into the second module central zone from the ramp. And speaking of the ramp coming into the central zone, they had 3 containers sticking on an incline, but the containers themselves weren't sitting inclined with the ramp. I'm a stickler for details, and those kind of incorrect physical mistakes with objects bug me. It's minor details, but it just doesn't look right, and those little minor mistakes all add up visually and make a difference. Another thing for me was the use of Firaxan sharks as a central computer AI intelligence, or whatever they were supposed to be. That seems so out of place for me for the authors to use a biological entity in place of a non-organic central computer AI like that. While I was playing it, I was thinking at the time, why didn't they just put in place a glowing, colored, floating sphere that rotated instead? Maybe add some electrical lightning sparking off it or something? That would seem more computer-like as an AI intelligence. Anyway, like Oops pointed out in his blog, this is one of those mods that was probably alright at the time it was released, despite its bugs, when KOTOR 2 was still somewhat new. Because it had potential, still does really, which could have been improved upon a little more. But I'm betting that the M4-78 EP mod is going to be at least better than this old M4-78 version, judging from the way everybody else has described playing it. So I'm looking forward to playing that version when I get the time.
Hello everybody, my name is Zool, and we were actually planning on me having a full review in this video, but things are getting a little bit long as it is. So stay tuned because that is going to be released as a separate video. I will throw a link down in the description if you're interested in that. And that's it for this video, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next chapter, the M4-78 that Stoney built.